Welcome back to another Epidose of these crazy people that just eat meat and can't stop talking about it. Today, Justin and I are recording another short ribs. Too bad I didn't put the short ribs background up for myself. But anyways, we thought we'd get together and crack wise about some of the sacred topics of carnivore. And so what are we talking about this time, Justin?
Well, before I reveal this video's topic, I just want to make sure everyone hit that subscribe button. Also hit that like button. Go ahead and slam an egg on it, a steak, maybe some bacon. Make a whole sandwich on that like button. That'd be amazing. Hit that bell icon so that you know whenever you're notified that any of our videos premiere or when a new video does arrive. And today's topic is bone broth as one of these well, as I was talking about it, in the carnivore keto community, I know about so much about the keto community, but certainly the carnivore community, it's seen as a magical elixir. Like, oh, you got to have your bone broth. Oh, you got to make, I'm making bone broth. Oh, I've got it sitting there for 36 hours. It's going to be so full of nutrients and everything. And oh, have you tried this recipe? Or do you throw in salt? Do you not throw in salt? Oh, I'm doing a fast. Can I have bone broth? Yeah, just bone broth, bone broth, bone broth. It is winter over here on our part of the world. And typically when it's winter, more people are talking about bone broth. I know some people, which I don't mind, and this is no hate, but some people do use it as an alternative to coffee because they want something warm to drink. And I think that makes sense, you know, since many of us react to teas and things like that. So I think it has its place. It's just a lot of the time I'll see posts of, oh, I think I'm deficient in this, or I'm struggling with this fasting, or I'm struggling with this or that. And a lot of people just say, oh, make some bone broth, have some bone broth, you know, freeze some bone broth. I've had bone broth. I believe Tom's had bone broth before. It's okay. It might be because we're from Southern California and there's hardly ever a day below 70. So growing up in Southern California, at least for me, hot food just never appeals to me. And yeah, bone broth's easy to make. I mean, you know, if you get, you know, say New York strips with the bone in, you strip the bones off, you save them, you throw them in a freezer or something. Then when you've got, you know, 8 or so, you could just throw them in a crock pot, throw in a few cups of water, whatever, 32 ounces, something like that. And then just set it to cook for a day or so. And then boom, bone broth. So I get it. It's not a huge thing. It's one of those things that never appealed to me. And it's just touted as something great. And there's people that every single day they have bone broth, which again, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just I don't see myself drinking it all the time. The taste is okay. I don't see anything magical about it or anything. I feel like what would appeal more to me is maybe just straight bone marrow. You know, people cut the bone halves and they'll throw them in the oven and eat those. Or, you know, just chew on some chicken bones. You could snap a chicken bone, wings or whatever with our jaws pretty easily. You have to be careful, of course. Fish bones is a no-go. That's way too thorny. But yeah, that's kind of my little.
You can eat the really fine ones. People do all the time, right?
Right. Yeah. And you get the same cartilage, or you get the same benefits from tendon and from cartilage, say in chicken or other animals as well. So it isn't the only way to get. So people are worried about collagen, magnesium, a little bit of potassium, things like that is in the bones, right? And that's what people are trying to extract when they do the bone broth. Depending on who you talk to, largely probably unnecessary unless you have an identifiable deficiency. But other people, you know, it's kind of like the organs thing that like, oh, if you want to get all your nutrients, you have to have the organs. There's calcium in muscle meat. If you're eating the fat, and as long as you're not, so even if you get it from the store, there's still fragments of everything in there. You're getting fragments of tendon, getting fragments of bone, and you're getting fragments, well, you're getting the meat and the fat, obviously, as well. So I think people look at it and they think, oh, I'm not eating any bones, I'm not getting any calcium. But it's like, no, you are. It's just you're not getting whatever high dosage of it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about bone broth is while the longer you cook the bones, the more you tend to get out of the bones. That's also tends to the longer you cook it, the higher the histamine levels.
Right.
So for people who are sensitive to histamines, and you probably want to cook it a lot shorter period of time. So, and then there's the quality of the bone. You know, it's like, well, can you find a grass finished, you know, organic bones? And yeah, you can get those if you look hard enough, or you can order them online. But typically, they're best if they're frozen, I think. So, anyways, that all becomes challenging. And I got nothing against bone broth, but like Justin said, becomes this magic elixir that supposedly fixes everything. And I tend to get a little skeptical about some of the claims. I mean, it certainly has its place. Like we said, if you enjoy it, by all means, you know, and keep enjoying it. But I'm not sure that it's quite as important or significant as people are led to believe sometimes. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much bone broth was made, in ancestral times, right? Maybe, I mean, probably grinding down bones, maybe more. Again, like Tom says, we didn't even develop fire until like 300,000 years ago or something like that. So certainly no bone broth before then, more or less.
Yeah, I think we the evidence for us mastering fire doesn't really go back that far. It's probably like somewhere on the around 100,000 years or less, something like that. So yeah, I don't know how much broth we would have been making. I mean, that's a big argument for, you know, how could we possibly be eating all these plants that have to be detoxified, right? So we were eating bone marrow, you know, quite clearly, you know, for millions of years we've been smashing open bones and eating the marrow out of them. So, you know, I don't know, maybe, and it seems to me the nutrients you get out of the bone marrow is far more dense than trying to drink the bones. But you know, there is evidence too that we pulverize bones, fish bones, and animal bones, and they're part of the diet to some extent. So, in some areas, I think they did resolve nutritional deficiencies by doing things like eating powdered fish bones and stuff like that. So, but of course, that is where a deficiency existed. And I think one of the problems is, well, a lot of times people just assume they're deficient in something, and then they start taking a supplement, or, you know, decide they have to have something like bone broth or whatever. And I'm not sure that it's always all that well founded. So I don't know. But yeah, I on one hand, it's a good food. On the other hand, I hate to see things elevated and put on a pedestal for reasons that seem to lack some evidence. So.
And you can make a lot. It's cheap. I get it. If you're one of the people that do want to use every part of the animal and all that stuff, yeah, it's a great thing. My freezer doesn't have room for bone broth. You can throw in a few more steaks. Thank you very much, or some ground beef. And the thing about ground beef, which is a question I've been meaning to ask you, Tom, is, how cleanly is the ground beef made? And what I mean by that is, we're probably getting a bit more organ, bone, and thing. I think I even had a burger the other day, and it was just from a premium ground beef company, and there was like a chunk of bone. Like I bit it, and it was like hard. So that does happen. So yes, you're probably getting everything, especially something like ground beef. I know some people only do cuts, and maybe you're getting deficient that way. I don't know, but 90% of us do ground beef from what I understand. And if you're doing ground beef, you're probably getting a little bit of everything, to be quite honest.
Oh yeah, so definitely there is a little bit of bone in ground beef, ground turkey, pork sausage, stuff like I always find little bits of bone and stuff like that. So I'm not sure. I mean, obviously you can't chew hard bone up, and when you swallow it, I'm not sure how much that you can actually absorb, but you know, I'm sure the stomach acid attacks it to a certain degree, and you know, some of that is absorbed, but you know, I don't know how much bone we actually need to eat. You know, I've heard people make inferences that we have to have the bone in order to be healthy. And there certainly has been pockets of civilizations that have used the bone to offset deficiencies, but I don't think it's at all clear how that applies to people in general that have a nice steady supply of ruminant meat. And then add to that that most people, even though beef or ruminant meat, goat, lamb, stuff like that is the most common, a lot of us eat other meats as well, right?
Right.
So there's going to be chicken and pork and seafood. I like shellfish. I've never met a lobster I didn't like. I'll take the time to eat crab sometimes. I like the freshwater fish and the saltwater fish. I pretty much, it's all hands on deck when it comes to eating, that, or eggs or whatever. So yeah, I don't really know that, with our modern wide variety of food, if we're likely to see those deficiencies, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And, if you're worried about calcium, milk, which I know is debatable, but cheese and egg shells. So I know there's been a few people that just crush up eggshells. You just put them in hot water, similarly to making a broth, but not nearly as long. And then they're soft enough to where you can just down them. Basically, you just want to make it hot enough to where it would kill any kind of pathogen or anything that might be on the outside of the shell. Um, and yeah, there's your calcium. So there's other ways. So yeah, and I think people, and I had this thought too, it's you have to eat what you want to heal. And so I think people that think they have some kind of joint issue or a bone issue, they think, oh, I got to eat bone, but it's like, not necessarily, because it's made of protein. So if you're it's just, I think people do silly things like eat less meat and have bone broth and fast. And they think that's better for the body than just eating the meat. And maybe in certain cases, but if you really have issues with cartilage, joints, bone, you've been in a car accident, which I know a thing or two about, getting that protein high, I think, is probably does the body better, because that's what it needs to build to rebuild those cells. If you're fasting, yeah, you're doing a great job of breaking down. And I understand the argument of autophagy and things like that. But you want it to get built and to build stronger and to cut down on that inflammation. And to me, the easiest way to do that is to increase that protein. So being injured, I just don't see us skipping meals and having bone broth as being the smart thing to me.
Yeah, I mean, just from the calcium standpoint, both steak and eggs have calcium in them, so.
Right.
Some of your organ meats like liver don't have much, but most people don't. Most people don't eat a limited amount of liver anyways, which is full of all kinds of other nutrients. So there's only so much liver to go around,
Yeah.
So
Too
yeah,
much to go around.
so we didn't want to necessarily crap all over the sacred cow that is bone broth, but I think it's important to put things in perspective. Like, everybody kind of has this idea like they're living in a state of deficiency. And then the flip side of that is everybody wants to fast, which seems to kind of increase the level of deficiency. So yeah. So just to have a little perspective on the subject, do you have to drink bone broth? Probably not. Depends on your circumstances, but I think most people do fine without it. So of
Yeah,
course,
I think it's go ahead.
I was gonna say there's all kinds of quality bone broths you could buy now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's also why it's big. It gives people something to sell and people something to buy. People love their supplements. I think many of us in the health community, where we feel weird, and I'm like this, we feel weird if we're not popping a bunch of pills, supplements, protein powders, bone broth, collagen powder is a huge one now. See that sold everywhere, and that's a whole different video about collagen. But that's another reason why people make bone broth, is they want the collagen as well.
All right, so maybe you guys out there want to post your favorite bone broth recipes. Tell us whether you love it, or you hate it, or maybe it made a big difference in some symptom you have or something like that. Let us know in the comments below.
And if you live somewhere where it's like -30, through the winter, like our friend Amanda who lives in northern Canada, get it, bone broth, something warm. Totally understand.
Yeah, to my cousins out there in Wisconsin, freezing there. What's off in Eau Claire, or my girlfriend hanging out in Hickston where it's 4 degrees or whatever right now. So be honest with you, I've never seen any bone broth in the Midwest, but somebody out there must be drinking it. So and hey, maybe we need to invent the cold bone broth cocktail.
There you go.
Bone broth on the rocks for us people in the warmer climates. So, but anyways, until next time, eat some
meat, feel better, and whatever you do, don't fall down the carb hole.